Today's video is part of a series I'm filming, Back to Basics, and today is going to be about the setup differences for the different golf clubs. So I'm going to be looking at the whole bag and talking about how we change our approach to our setup position when we're hitting a wedge, hitting a mid-iron, hitting a driver. If it's something you're struggling with or any confusion, make sure you check out this video. It's really going to simplify these things for you. Welcome back to the TruGolf Academy. You've joined me, Jon Watts, today at Branston Golf and Country Club. Today's video, as I mentioned there, is part of a series on Back to Basics. So I have filmed a couple other videos on this and I will put the links in here talking about the general setup with a mid-iron, all the things that we needed to know, and one on the general golf swing, giving you a real good guide on what to do in the full golf swing there with a mid-iron. Today's video is actually going on to the differences with the different golf clubs. So for me, I'm trying to make a very similar swing, a very similar movement at the golf ball, as I mentioned in my golf swing Back to Basics video. Today's video, as I said, is just going to be about how we change our approach, our setup position, when we're hitting a wood to hitting a mid-iron to hitting a wedge. So I'm going to be going straight into this. So I've picked on three clubs just from the spectrums really. So I've got the driver, my longest club, my sand wedge, which is my shortest club, and I've got my middle club here, the mid-iron. This video is relevant with all the clubs, but rather than just going through all 14 of them, we're going to be talking about these three clubs, and obviously you can fill the gaps in the middle there. So if we just have a quick recap with a mid-iron, which is the video I've already done, and it's definitely worth checking out that link first. And I'm going to breeze through these couple of things. We talked about in that video that we want about a hand span gap from the end of the club to our body. We want our feet as wide as our shoulders, so that's dangling the club from shoulders to the inside edges of our shoes or the middle of our shoes, and we want to flare our lead foot out, okay? My ball position is very central. The one thing I didn't mention in that video is my handle position. So if I drop the grip of the club, I would want it to rest on the inside edge of my lead thigh. So my lead side is the side that's closest to the target here, my left side. So if I drop the end of the golf club, I want it to hit or rest on the right side of my lead side of my left thigh. And that means my hands are slightly ahead of the golf club. Now, if I jump into these other golf clubs, so I'm going to be jumping here into a driver, which I would be playing off a tee. But what we've got is a lot of similarities. I would still start feet together. I still want a hand span gap end of the club to my body. But what I do is I want the ball nearer my front foot. So my lead side, I'm going to do a tiny step with my front foot, a bigger step with my back foot. So the ball is now, instead of in the middle where it was with the mid-iron, it's actually up near my lead heel. The other similarities, I still want to turn that toe out. And if I drop the end of the club, look where it's resting. Again, on the right half of my left thigh, my lead side here. That actually, because the ball's gone more forwards, means my hands are quite level with the golf club, with a driver, whereas with a mid-iron, my hands are slightly forwards. Now, as I move into a sand wedge, same distance gap from the end of the club to my body. Feet still shoulder width apart, still flare my foot out, and I've kept the ball in the middle, okay? Again, if I drop the end of the club on a full shot, I'd want my hands to still be towards my trail thigh. So what's changing here is my ball position, not my handle position. So my hands on all full shots are always over the right half of my left thigh for me as a right-handed golfer, okay? So towards my lead side. What's changing is the ball position. So for a 7-iron all the way down to my most lofted club here, my 58 degree, I'm keeping the ball in the center of my stance. As I go longer than a 7-iron, so I've got 6-iron, 5-iron, 4-iron, 3, hybrid club, fairway wood, etc. So those longer clubs, those lower irons into the fairway woods, the ball is gradually creeping forwards. So we had the ball left heel for a driver, and middle, which I'm going to put a ball there, and middle for a mid-iron, a 7-iron down to a sand wedge. So the ball is moving sort of half a ball's width forwards per club. So it's gradually moving towards my lead side as the club gets longer, but it's not moving back in my stance, okay? We're always keeping it into the center here. There are a couple of shots where we play the ball back in our stance. One is chipping. So round the edge of the green, a bump and run, a chip and run. And I've already filmed a video on that, quite a basic video, and I'm going to put a link just here about the basics that we need with chipping position. So chipping is one time we can play the ball further back in our stance, and the only other times we do it is when we're trying to keep the ball low. So that might be into wind, or when we've got to go under trees, for instance, is the only time we're moving the ball back. For all other full shots, 7-iron to sand wedge or lob wedge, the ball is in the middle and it's gradually moving forwards. But the bit I mentioned there that's really vital is, although the ball position is changing, my handle position isn't. So if I drop the end of the club, it would rest on my lead thigh. So I just want to quickly go on to where my weight would be at setup with these couple of clubs and the difference between it. So I'm going to set up a driver here and then a 7-iron. So with the driver, we would generally be teeing that ball up. We're not going to normally be playing off the fairway. So I've popped that ball on the tee. And in terms of a tee height, if I quickly jump into that one, we want to get the ball high enough that when the club is resting behind the ball, we've got half the ball showing above the top of the golf club. So half the ball is below, half the ball is above. So we're almost getting that worm's eye view. If I show you that way, if you're at worm's eye view, you would see half the ball sticking above the top of the golf club. If you're a beginner golfer, I would suggest using the castle tee, the plastic ones that are coloured. And then you know you're pushing in the same amount every time. You know you've got a consistent tee height. So generally it's that pink, quite a bright pink one there for most drivers. There are some difference in terms of height, so find out what works best for you. But generally we want that ball to be about half the ball above the top of the golf club. That's all I want to talk about in terms of tee height. With a driver, with an iron, most of the time we're going to be playing it from the fairway. The only time we might play it from a tee would be a par 3 when we're looking for less distance, we're not hitting the driver. But I want to talk here just quickly about where our weight would be. So with a 7-iron, a mid-iron in my hand, that routine again, forefinger gap, feet to shoulder width, ball is in the center and I've turned my toe out. My same posture, and I'd want my weight to be quite equal. If I'm going to be either way, I mentioned in the video that I filmed that I would prefer to slightly favour my lead side because we are striking a little bit downwards with an iron, okay? So we're hitting the ball and the turf. It doesn't mean I'm trying to hit down on the golf ball, I'm not trying to throw my arms into the ground, but the setup changes that we've got here are going to give me a slightly downward blow on the golf ball. So we're expecting to see a little bit of a divot happening as well here. So I've got my weight either 50-50 or slightly favouring my lead foot. In terms of the heel-toe balance, it's the same for every shot. We want to be as equal as possible heel-toe. So a good way to do that, as I mentioned in that video, is heels, toes, heels, toes. Find that bite point, find that middle zone that we want to be in. And that's exactly the same with the driver. The difference with the driver is where our pressure is in terms of our lead foot to our trail foot. So, same setup, forefinger gap, end of the club to my body, little step with my front foot. It was that bigger step with my back foot. So the ball was opposite my lead heel and I'm still turning that toe out. Now what we're trying to do with a driver, we're actually trying to hit up a little bit on the golf ball, the opposite to an iron. So what we do is we don't change our hip placement, we just tilt our upper body. So I'm not changing my lower body, I'm just going to feel like I tilt my upper body slightly behind the golf ball. That sets my head, my nose, my sternum a little bit further back behind the golf ball, meaning that I reach my lowest point before the ball and the club is striking a little bit more upwards. So I set my pressure about 60% onto my trail foot at setup with a driver. That is one of the main differences, iron to drive. I have done a video a little bit more in depth about where your weight should be on my body track fist system on a force platform, And I will put a link up here. If you're a beginner golfer, maybe ignore that one. But if you're if you're back to basics, if you've been struggling, got a better idea or concept of the game, check that video out, a little bit more detailed about where our pressure or weight, you could think of it, should be. So I'm setting myself this way. Now for every golf shot, whether we're starting with our weight on our lead foot or my trail foot, we want to make sure that we swing all the way through to finish onto our lead side. And again, the video I filmed about the back to basics general swing, I talked about that. So it's definitely worth checking out that video about getting that pressure towards your lead side. I'm very going to quickly, that was good English, wasn't it? I'm very quickly going to hit one driver and one 7-iron, just so you can see the difference there. So I'm going to go through the same routine, 4-finger gap, little step, big step, flare that foot out, okay? Same posture as an iron, and all I'm going to do differently is tilt so my trail shoulder, my side here, my sternum is behind the golf ball. The swing, it's still important that we finish in balance onto our lead side. So let me go ahead and hit one. So my pressure is onto my lead side, my body is rotated towards the target, exactly as I want it to be, with a mid-iron here, a 7-iron. Still the same gap, end of the club to my body. Feet shoulder width apart, and the ball is now in the center. Okay, as far back as it gets, unless we're talking about those couple of shots I mentioned, still flare my lead foot out. My posture, but I'm just feeling a little bit more pressure, either equal or slightly favoring my lead side. The swing remains the same. So let me go ahead and hit one. With those setup changes, the ball that bit further back, a bit more pressure forwards, it will help me hit downwards on the golf ball to get that ball and divot. So you can see a good imbalanced golf swing, pressures onto my lead side, and I hit the ball and a divot. On both of those, I just swung it nice and smooth, more so you can see the differences between them, and I will slow them down anyway. But it's great if you can just understand the setup changes for the different clubs that we're using. A big one is ball position. So remembering that 7-iron to sandwich center, as it gets longer, it's gradually moving forwards. And the only other thing there really is about where our pressure is. The rest of the setup, the distance away from the golf ball, our handle position remains the same. That has to be a constant. If that video has helped, make sure you check out the rest of the series. They're going to help you out also. And do hit the thumbs up and subscribe to my channel lastly, to make sure you never miss a video again. It is for free, and 2 to 3 videos going live every week.